Welcome back to Charlie's Mailbox, where I answer actual questions from actual people in my inbox. This week's question actually was not in my inbox, it was somebody stopping by my office, and it was a follow up on last week's topic, which was all about URLs. How can you access a web tool simply by entering its URL in the browser? And I mentioned in that episode that often you have different versions of a URL, some of them longer than others, and that you should typically start with the shorter one. And it led to this conversation about, what is all that stuff in a URL anyway? So let's call the question, how do you interpret the different parts of a URL? Now, this is perhaps a little bit more theoretical this week than practical, but I will tell you that I have used it in practice many times to get out of a jam, and I do think it's the kind of information that is helpful to know at a basic level. So let's just jump into it. You can see I'm here at the CVU homepage, and let's say I come down here and I click on Staff Directory. Okay. We'll notice that up here in the what Google calls the Omni box, the URL just changed. Right? Now, let's say I then put in my own last name to search for myself, and hopefully I'm in the directory, and I click Search Directory. If we go back up here to the Omni box, again, the URL just got a lot longer. In fact, it's too long to fit in the size allocated. And you'll notice that it did, in fact, find me. So the question is what is all this stuff in this URL? Well, let's take a look at that. I'm going to switch actually over to Google Slides. And this is the original URL that I was visiting. That is our homepage. Now, before we get into more detail on that, on a very basic level, this is what happens when you put a URL into your browser. You enter it into the browser, and there's this thing called the internet. I'm kidding, but via the internet, what actually happens is you are then connected to another computer called a server. That server could be anywhere in the world. Now, in this case, it is a computer that is owned by the company that hosts our website. It's called Final Site, and they have servers, right? And so when I go to this address, it's actually creating a connection to this server. Now, this server in turn is connected to a database that is storing the necessary data in order to generate our website. And as I visit pages on our site, it's this back and forth between my browser and the server. But what's often misunderstood is what is actually coming back from the server. How is it that I'm seeing these web pages on my computer? And it turns out the answer is that you are sending an address. And again, it's complicated how that finds the server, but let's not worry about that. It finds the server, and what the server is actually sending back is a file, typically several files, but it's just like a plain text file written in a format called HTML that your browser, like Chrome or Firefox or Safari, is able to interpret. And so the reason I'm seeing this on my screen right now is because I got a file back from the server that instructs my browser how to show this. In fact, I could disconnect from the internet right now, and this page would still show because I already have that file that I received from the server, and it's already been loaded up in my browser. Okay, enough of the big theory stuff. Let's now actually get at the specifics of the URL. So this is, in fact, the URL that I just copied from my browser. And what we want to do is figure out what all these different parts mean. Now, you can see that I have color-coded different parts of it. We have the part in blue, which is what we saw earlier. Then we have a / school info, etc., a / contact us, a / staff directory. What does that all mean? It simply means that the files on the server are organized into folders. So there's a folder called school info, and then inside of that folder, there's another folder called contact us. And then inside of the contact us folder, there is something called staff directory, and that's the file that I was talking about that gets sent. By the way, the reason I know that that's the file is you'll notice after staff directory, there's no longer a forward slash. So we're no longer in a folder anymore. We now start with a question mark. And so what do the question mark indicate? Well, when I first go to the page, the staff directory page, it's going to look the same way as if you went to it right now, or if anyone else went to it right now. It would just be a blank staff directory page. However, once I actually put in my information that I was searching for my last name, that generated what's called a parameter in the URL. Those are the things following the question mark. Okay. And they are separated by these ampersands. Again, I don't want to get too detailed, but as you can see, once I did that and clicked enter, a whole bunch of other things came in. Now, I'm just going to go straight to right here. There was a parameter called const search last name equals, and that's what I entered right there. That's what I entered. You'll notice that none of these other equals have anything after them. It's because I didn't enter anything there. So what happens is when the request is sent to the server, back in this step, not only is there a URL, but there's all these parameters at the end. And that then allows the server to communicate with the database and get the specifics for the parameters that I provided, in this case, my last name. Now, what this means, by the way, is if I were to go back to this page, and I didn't change my last name here, but just as a matter of interest, if I were to go up to the URL, excuse me, and I'm just going to use my right arrow key to get over to where I put my name in. Look how many parameters there are. Okay. There's my last name right there. I'm going to backspace over it. Okay. And I'm going to put in a different last name, Booth. And I'm going to hit the enter key. And you'll notice now that Booth got replaced here. And now we're getting a search for my colleague, Peter Booth. And so I didn't need to change anything on the page. I just changed the URL because I knew that's where that ended up. And that's what I meant earlier about getting out of a jam. Sometimes websites have errors, right? And they're not designed exactly correctly. By understanding how URLs work, you can often sort of get around that, so to speak. So I hope that you found that somewhat interesting. Hope that helped. Have a great week.